So overall, it's been a very good session, and some things, again, were left on the table. That always happens.
We were here and we attended class, but did we write any really good papers to get up there? No, I don't think that we did.
The 2015 legislative session is in the books. Did lawmakers accomplish enough? We'll talk about it. At Issue starts right now. Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the critical issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. And we want you to share your opinions and comments with us. Just go to facebook.com/MPB Online News. On Twitter, our handle is @IssueMPB. Also visit our webpage, mpbonline.org. Well, lawmakers wrapped up the 2015 legislative session at the state capitol this week, and they're headed back home for Easter weekend. Several issues facing the state were addressed during the session. Some were not. Let's get right to what passed this year. First, the legislature agreed on a nearly $6.3 billion budget for next year, which includes borrowing $450 million to fund various projects around the state. The House and Senate approved more money for education, about $110 million more, but still short of the MAEP budget formula. Families with special needs students will be getting some help with $6,500 vouchers to seek services outside the public school system. The vouchers will be available to only 500 students, just a fraction of the 65,000 special needs students in Mississippi. Public hospitals will be required to have open meetings. This action comes after a pension scandal at Singing River Hospital in Jackson County. Starting this summer, it will be illegal to text and drive in Mississippi. This includes writing, sending, and reading text messages, emails, and social media messages. And you don't have to worry about vehicle inspection stickers anymore, at least not after July 1st. Lawmakers decided the stickers are no longer necessary. Well, here's what did not pass. The big one, tax cuts. Republicans were pushing for eliminating the individual income tax and some business taxes, but Democrats put the brakes on the idea. The legislature ran out of time to debate the legislation to change how the Board of Trustees of the Institutions of Higher Learning conducts business after the board essentially fired Ole Miss Chancellor Dan Jones and created a statewide backlash. And Governor Bryant's proposed $25 million workforce training program did not pass, but he could call a special session to get it done. We spoke with the governor to get his thoughts on the session.
As always, you get some things you really wanted and some that you don't. And so that's the process within the legislature. We're glad to see that we've got some contract review. That's something I've been working for 2 sessions now. So that's going to help us to make sure that we have more accountability, more transparency. Transparency in hospital and public hospitals is another good bill that we've seen. I think the special needs bill was something that was very dear to me. We were able to get that done. We've got a step raise for troopers, so something that's kind of been overlooked, but the Highway Patrol now will know into the future what they will be able to make when they go from a sergeant to a lieutenant. And that's critical for the families and members of our Department of Public Safety. I think we again protected Second Amendment rights, so people will be able to carry their weapon for their self-protection. Again, very important. Balanced budget is something we overlook in Mississippi. We've done it for so long now, people ignore it. That's critically important. It took a lot of work to help get that done. I obviously am disappointed we didn't get tax relief for Mississippians or for Mississippi businesses. We had opportunities to do that, and we just simply weren't able to get that done. As we look at going into funding education, I think the largest funding of public education in the state's history. So overall, it's been a very good session. And some things, again, were left on the table. That always happens.
Republicans in both the House and Senate we spoke with say the session was a success.
Most proud of during this legislative session is that we ended with a budget that spends more money on public education than's ever been spent in the history of our state. We didn't just confine the very large increases to K through 12. We also have increased funding significantly for our community colleges and for our institutions of higher learning. Obviously, the special needs bill is one that I am personally excited about and feel that giving those individuals a better opportunity is something that all of Mississippians should be proud of.
Well, I think we had a great session. One of a grade, a letter grade, I would say B+. We missed the opportunity to do a tax break for the citizens. That's one opportunity we missed. But on the positive side, we were able to put more money, 69% of new available dollars into education, K through 12, and more into some of the community college and universities' budgets. We also were able to pass the legislation that would allow oral chemo treatments in lieu of infusion if it's available and possible, and the insurance companies would be required to allow the same copay. Did we get everything done we wanted? No, but we did get a pay raise for the troopers and the Bureau of Narcotics agents. We did the second year of the pay raise for teachers. We addressed the state employees who hadn't had a raise in a good long while last year. And I think this term, if you wanted to grade this term, we'd have to get an A. The session itself a B+ mainly because we missed the opportunity on the tax break.
I think it's been a very successful session, very good session. We've had some bumps along the way, but by and large, we've accomplished a lot. We have a solid budget, and we feel like we had a good success this session.
Wait, what were some of those bumps during the session?
Oh, there are always disagreements, and you know, we've had some heated debates. The debate over the compact that I presented for a balanced budget was one. Good, vigorous debate, good questions and answers. But you know, it's not everything is not hunky dory. You know, when the legislature meets, we're 122 members from different districts. We all have a different constituent base, so there are going to be disagreements. But by and large, it's been a good session.
Democrats on both sides of the state capitol were not as pleased with the session.
Well, I mean, we didn't get accomplished all the things that I would like to have seen accomplished. We didn't do everything that we could on education. We did a little bit for roads and bridges and infrastructure and that sort of thing. We probably did that maybe to the detriment of some other groups who were pushing it, who got left out. You know, on education, we've just not done everything, and we certainly didn't do anything for health care, I don't think. And that's just a lot of money sitting out there that Mississippi is not getting. I mean, it's at least $1 billion a year. It's $3 million a day. We should be doing something better, and we should be getting that money into the state, because education, healthcare dollars, those all translate to jobs at the local level. We didn't do that.
If you had to give the session a particular grade, what do you think it would be at right now?
A C. We were here and we attended class. But did we write any really good papers to get up there? No, I don't think that we did.
I think we've done a lot of positive things. We've made a lot of changes in the way of education. We've been able to fund our colleges and universities, but not to the point that we think some of them should have been funded. Been able to reduce taxes for citizens back home. So I think we've done quite a few things in the that would benefit the people back home. I think we've had a pretty good session thus far.
If you had to give it a letter grade, what do you think it would be right now?
I would say about a B-.
So there's room for improvement.
Yes, certainly room for improvement. One of the things that we, did not do, we didn't fully fund the MAEP formula, but we did, of course, come close. It's only been fully funded twice. So I think we've done a lot of good things this year. As I said, education, economic development, a lot of economic development projects that we've funded that would help people back at home and around the state of Mississippi. Very positive things.
I think one of the most important things that happened this session was that the Democrats stood up and did not allow this election year gimmick of a tax cut. Ultimately, there was a vote on a tax cut which would have reduced the general fund by 1/3. And for whatever reason, the Republicans felt compelled to vote for that. We can't reduce the general fund by 1/3. That would reduce funding for public schools by 1/3. Every community college, 1/3. Reduce universities funding by 1/3. Cut, by the way, the budget for public television by 1/3. at a time when we need funds to maintain our roads and take care of basic infrastructure. The notion that there would be a serious proposal to reduce taxes in an amount equal to 1/3 of the general fund is very disturbing. And I think this was an election year gimmick. I think the people recognize it as an election year gimmick, and thank goodness there were enough Democrats in the House of Representatives to kill the proposition.
We put a little more money into MAEP, which is public education. We're putting more money in the universities and colleges and junior colleges and all of that. Education, to me, is a priority. It's the only way up and out, so we didn't put enough in it. But, you know, water put out a fire, but you got to have enough of it. We didn't quite have enough, but we headed in the right direction towards it more than we had done in previous years.
And this brings us to our At Issue Roundtable. Austin Barber is a Republican strategist. He's the founding partner of Clearwater Group. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney and the executive director of a political action committee called the Mississippi Democratic Trust. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
The session's wrapped up. Brandon, let me start with you. Your assessment, any winners, losers of the session?
Well, I think the people of Mississippi lost. We are $200 million short on our education budget. And, you know, if I'm talking about folks that won, I think that House Democrats stayed together, did an effective job of trying to stave off some of the worst Republican policies of the session and, you know, kept them from completely dismantling our budget.
Some of the worst Republican policies, such as?
Well, there were times when things had to be massaged. I think the tax cuts that came through were a real misguided effort. We look at our budget now, and I think when we all told we had about $800 left in the kitty. And so the idea that we would have layered over on top of that tax cuts that were really designed to only help a very small percentage of Mississippians, that would have been a bad policy.
I assume that, Austin, your assessment's a little different?
I would say that you're probably the biggest winner because you've been able to deal with Brandon and me for this many weeks and the crew here.
That's right.
Or at least me to be able to have to deal with what Brandon is going to spew every week. Listen, I think it's clear that Republicans are the winner. The Republican leadership on education, big deal, $110 million. The viewers have listened to us, particularly me, say this, you know, throughout the weeks. $110 million more dollars this year for education, K through 12 alone, than last year. That's a tremendous amount of money for education. Republicans have put education at the top of their issue chart, and they addressed it. Record funding, continuing the pay raise for teachers, and of course we heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about the special needs bill that Representative Crawford and Senator Collins worked so hard on, and it was good to see that issue get addressed as well and passed and signed by the governor.
Are you surprised that Republicans were not able to coalesce, to pick your word, to do whatever they needed to do to get the tax cuts passed? Because this was something that a lot of them felt very strongly about.
Oh, they did. I mean, taxes was a big issue. You had the House and the Senate that both had plans. The House plan came out a little late. I think that maybe hurt them a little bit. The Lieutenant Governor had been out there for a long time with his plan, but they came together. They had a compromise bill. Look, you have to lay this at the feet of the House Democrats who voted against it. I think there were 72 or so House Democrats that voted against the bill. They killed the bill. The voters will make a decision about how they want to address it in November in the elections.
I like that math. 72 House Democrats, maybe a little bit of foreshadowing on that one. That'd be a good number.
If my number on there, however many it was,
look,
I don't know.
I think that it's notable that two of the biggest hallmark policies that Governor Bryant said he wanted to pass in his State of the State, workforce training and tax cuts, failed. And they didn't fail because of the big Democratic boogeyman. Look, Republicans own this government. They've got every branch, and they are very active in that legislature. And the reason that those bills didn't pass is because the governor does not talk to the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor doesn't talk to the speaker, and the speaker doesn't talk to his members. Republicans have still not figured this stuff out. And when that little vaudeville show isn't what's happening, then they're trying to pass bills to get votes that look good on political push cards.
Listen, it's not 72 Democrats. Obviously, there are not enough Democrats. That's my fault there. Nobody knows what vaudeville is, and nobody cares. Nobody cares whether the governor, the lieutenant governor, or the House, or the Speaker of the House is talking. What they care about is, we just talked about record funding for education, balanced budget. We have close to $500 million in the rainy day fund. They're not having the issues that Louisiana's having of how do we fix this massive Medicaid hole? How do we fix this corrections hole? That's not what's happening. Spending appropriately is a top priority for this legislature and this governor, and they've done it, including on education. That's what voters care about, and that will be proven again in November in the elections when Republicans keep control of both the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion.
I don't think it's going to happen that way, but I think it's interesting that we're expanding in population, and so naturally you're going to spend more in a certain area whenever you get around to the budgeting process. And this bragging that I saw Lieutenant Governor Reeves do and that you're doing now about we spent more money, again,
yeah,
that's like taking credit for the census. Does President Obama get credit for the most Americans ever in history? You're taking credit for something that goes up incrementally every time anybody's in that chair. We could have elected a Green Party candidate. We'd be saying the same thing.
$110 million is not incrementally. Voters will get their chance. You had Democrats who said, nope, we don't want a tax cut. Okay, however many Democrats there were in the House that stopped that vote. Nope, we don't. So let's see. The bellwether candidates for the Democrats are the governor's candidate, Vicki Slater, and the lieutenant governor, Tim Johnson. What are they going to do? We don't know much about Mrs. Slater. Everybody thinks she's a pretty good lawyer. Everything I hear, we don't know much about her. Tim Johnson, he's going to struggle. He's got a history, as when he was on the Board of Supervisors in Madison County, of trying to have the largest tax increase in that county's history. That record's going to matter when you couple it with what the House has done. Voters get their chance.
That's shorthand, and that dumbs down the process. Madison County has the second lowest tax base in the state. These tax cuts, you couldn't even tell me what the tax cut proposal was. Lieutenant Governor couldn't even tell me because it was all nonsense. It was simply a ploy. They didn't talk about it. They had no intention of passing it. Very insincere. And if we want to talk about what really happened with education, they put that budget to bed a week earlier than any other part of the budget. The reason they did that is because they didn't want to talk about the money that came into the coffers in the tune of $30 million before the session was out. And when they were asked, hey, we've got $30 million here, what about an assistant teacher pay raise? What about plugging some of the holes? They basically said no. And I got to give you credit because you're the only Republican in the state of Mississippi who isn't owning the fact that, look, they've just said we're not fully funding education. That's our prerogative, and that's our policy point. That's what they've said to the initiative. That's what they've said in the budgeting process. It's not a priority, and they're owning it. And everybody at that legislature that we just saw was coming up with a fancy way of saying, we're Republicans, we're in charge, and we're not paying for education, and that's the way it's going to be.
What about this notion of that Brandon brought up, that essentially Republicans are not maximizing their position of power, that they have such control, but they're not getting together enough to fully realize that? Do you think that's an issue?
I don't know if that's sort of inside the Capitol spin or talk, and I don't know that matters. I mean, yeah, listen, do we want the legislative and the executive branch to communicate as best as that we possibly can? Of course we do. Do they? I have friends in both of those offices, and I think they do. I do think they communicate well. I'm sure, like any big entity that both of those are, they could communicate better on different issues. But I think they do a good job of working together. I think that the lieutenant governor and the governor specifically have been together on most issues this session, and I think they've stuck to what were their priorities. So.
Well, Brandon, you mentioned the House, the balance of power in the House. Is there really a realistic chance that the Democrats could take control?
Sure. There is. I mean, the recruiting was such that you now have Republican incumbents facing 25 of them facing Democratic challengers. And like we talked about last time, you only have Democrats with 5 or 6 Republican challengers, who are Democratic incumbents. And so when you look at that math breakdown and you consider the fact that there's only a 7-vote difference as of yesterday when they went sine die, I think, it's going to be competitive, and those are going to be the real battle in the trenches come November. It's in those House races.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. I think Brandon and his team have been involved in some of the recruitment efforts and fundraising. They've done a really good job. I think if you're watching on election night in November, those are the races. I think the governor's going to win pretty easily, the lieutenant governor. We'll see. They got to run good campaigns, but the legislative House races will be the ones to
What do the
watch.
Republicans need to do to keep that from happening?
Oh, they just got to go out there and talk about their record, talk about what they've done this session specifically, and run good, clean campaigns and keep it about issues. Don't do scare tactics that my friend likes to talk about. Just keep it about the issues. One other thing, we talked about a loser. IHL is potentially a big loser. I hate to go back to losers, but no one knows what's going to happen there. Much uncertainty with that agency of government. I have no doubt, I'd love to see what Brandon had to say, the legislature will seriously address IHL in 2016.
Of course, the Dan Jones issue and the non-renewal of his contract at Ole Miss is what has brought this up.
Yeah, it was kind of a bit of a disappointment yesterday to see that they, even after this protracted negotiation, couldn't come to an agreement. I think it's a real loss for the state and for the university. University of Mississippi is a powerhouse in this state. I think we all know that, whether we went there or not. And their growth over the last several years has been something to watch.
Brandon, Austin, thank you as always.
Absolutely.
A good session, good discussion. We appreciate it. Well, an education initiative voters will consider this fall will look slightly different on the ballot now that a Hinds County judge has decided alternative language submitted by the state legislature is misleading. Lawmakers had passed wording for Initiative 42A to establish an effective system of funding education. But here's the change. Hinds County Circuit Court Judge Winston Kidd added the phrase, but not provide a mechanism to enforce that right, to what voters will see. Governor Bryant and Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves are not happy about the judge's decision.
The fact of the matter is that this is exactly what we fear, and that is one Hinds County judge using his opinion and usurping the will of the legislature, all 174 members of the legislature who voted for it. He's also decided his opinion is more important than the Attorney General of our state, who's a Democrat, by the way, more important than the Secretary of State, more important than the elected Lieutenant Governor or the elected Speaker of the House. And so I think this is really indicative of exactly what we fear about Initiative 42, and that is the fact that one judge in Hinds County is going to decide how to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars, and people in Jackson County, and people in DeSoto County, and people in Lauderdale County, and people in Rankin County ain't going to have any say in how their money's spent if this initiative passes, because one judge in Hinds County is going to decide.
Is there any chance to appeal it?
I certainly hope so. I talked to the Attorney General yesterday. There's some difficulty, and he believes in the language of the law, but the legislature's hired a very good attorney, and we would like to see it before the Mississippi Supreme Court.
The original Initiative 42 will be on the ballot with the alternative. It calls for a proposed constitutional amendment to force lawmakers to fully fund education. The voters will decide in November. Well, the State College Board is officially looking for the successor to Ole Miss Chancellor Dan Jones after Jones rejected the board's 2-year extension with the requirement he would leave the chancellor post at the end of that contract extension. Board members had voted not to renew Jones' contract and cited financial issues at the University of Mississippi Medical Center under Jones' leadership. There was shock and outrage over that decision from Oxford to Jackson. As a result, the board decided to negotiate the contract extension. Negotiations lasted several days, and then Dr. Jones told reporters this week that remaining as a lame duck chancellor would make it difficult to recruit leaders and continue fundraising efforts. Next week on At Issue, we will focus on how the IHL does business and talk of reforming the board. MPB's Paul Boger joins us now to talk about some of these issues and other things, and sort of to look back like we did with Brandon and Austin. Paul, let's talk about what your sort of assessment. We won't have you grade the session, but give us sort of an assessment over the highs and the lows in your view.
Well, I mean, lots of stuff happened this session. You know, you had the vehicle inspection stickers, you had a Common Core task force that was developed, or the potential task force was developed. You saw a lot of different things, contract reform. Going from there, you know, it was I think a successful session for Republicans, maybe less so than they wanted, but I think they got a lot of what they were asking for.
Let's talk about this ballot initiative. That it was confusing to begin with, and the judge has attempted to clear things up. Can you give us a little backstory here and talk about whether this really will make it more clear to voters?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, last year there was this petition going around asking folks if they wanted lawmakers to fully fund education. It was very popular. Something like 200,000 Mississippians signed it. It went to the ballot, and per law, lawmakers got to write their own alternative. Now, the original proposal was that the state would create a efficient and fully funded schools. The new one, the legislative alternative, was effective public schools. Very similar wording.
And to the average voter, it's hard to tell the difference.
It seems like
am I
it
voting
might
for
be
here?
both are great things. However, legally, two totally different things. Yesterday, a Hinds County Court judge decided that that alternative, that legislative alternative, was not proper. Essentially, it didn't do enough to clarify itself from the original proposal.
Too similar.
Too similar.
At least in appearance's sake.
Yeah, didn't tell voters what exactly they did. So he essentially decided that he would take a different version that was written by proponents of Initiative 42 that would essentially very clearly, in my opinion, distinguish itself from the original proposal. And Republican leadership, as you heard just a few minutes ago, are not happy about it.
Well, we'll see what effect it has once folks do go to the polls and have to figure this out on their own, and what they will or will not support. We've got re-election campaigns coming up for a lot of people. How will these various issues play in that in our final 30 seconds here?
You know, there's a lot of folks who are going to go home and their constituents are going to like what they've done over the last session. You know, there are some people who are untouchable in the legislature. There's others who are going to have to go home and answer for some of the things that have happened. Tax cuts are probably going to come up big for Republicans to hit Democrats over the head, and education vice versa.
We'll see. Paul Boger, thanks. We're out of time. Please join us again next Friday night for another edition of At Issue. We'll be talking about the Board of Trustees at IHL. See you then.